Hello.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Sandeep Nair. I use the pronouns he and they. I'm the manager of business development at Pride Work Canada. This is my first time in Toronto, and I come from Nanaimo, BC, which is the unceded territories of the Sunaimu and Coast Salish people. Through dialogue, education, and thought leadership, Pride at Work Canada empowers Canadian employers to build workplaces that celebrate all employees, regardless of sex, gender expression, gender identity, and sexual orientation. We helped private, public, and not-profit employers to create safer, more inclusive workplaces that recognize the skills of 2S LGBTQI plus people. The vision we share with our proud partners and community partners is a Canada where every individual can achieve their full potential at work, regardless of their sex, gender expression, gender identity, and sexual orientation. Pride at Work Canada's ProPride has returned to Toronto after almost 2 years. So today's panel discussion, organized by Pride at Work Canada with the support of Rainbow Faith and Freedom, will delve into the intersections of gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, creed, and religion at work. The panel will be followed by a lively networking reception So please do stay to celebrate, network, connect, and learn more. Note that tonight is a cash bar, as we know that our communities have mixed experiences with alcohol. This is due to the challenges we see in community with regards to addiction, and that certain spiritual, religious, and cultural traditions do not partake in alcohol. However, please do enjoy tonight's food that is provided, that's complimentary. At Pride at Work Canada, we are working to create communities of care and collective access. We believe that we all benefit when everyone is included and that we all have a part to play in keeping each other safe. So help everyone be safe and comfortable. So we have made usage of masks encouraged. You may use it. We do recommend if it's comfortable. And we do encourage you to use hand sanitizers whenever you can. Please do respect private space. So please do provide enough space between yourself and others whenever you're speaking or engaging or interacting with them. We have provided 3 stickers at the registration table to just give you a little more understanding of them. The green and the square stickers, you are disclosing that you're comfortable with high fives and handshake. Yellow and heart-shaped stickers, you're comfortable with elbow bumps. And red and circle stickers, you're comfortable with waving a hello from a distance, or like we do in my part of the world, it's just folding hands to greet each other. Please do be advised that photography and or filming will be taking place during this event. By taking part in this event, you grant the event organizers, that is us, full rights to use the images resulting from photography and video filming, and any reproductions or adaptations of the images for promotion and other purposes. This might include, but is not limited to, the right to use them in print, online publicity, on our social media platforms as well. If you do not wish to be photographed, please do inform any team member of Pride at Work Canada, and we will be taking care of that. So please be aware that we might have media presence at this event as well. So before we get started, a quick acknowledgement. I would like to share that Pride at Work Canada works on the traditional territories of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. This includes Two-Spirit and LGBTQI+ Indigenous people. We recognize that there are multiple barriers that impact Two-Spirit and LGBTQI+ Indigenous people from accessing meaningful, affirming, and inclusive employment. In our work, we look to reduce those barriers and are open to feedback from Indigenous workers, employers, and job seekers in making that a reality. Pride at Work Canada's main office is based in Toronto, which is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. These lands and waters are the traditional homes and territories of and cared for by the Anishinaabe, Oranwenda, and Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and the Mississauga of Credit First Nation. Today, Toronto is home to Indigenous, Afro-Indigenous, and urban Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. So to start today's session, I would like to invite on stage Kim Wheatley, Anishinaabe cultural consultant, please. So Anishinaabe traditional grandmother Kim Wheatley is Turtle Clan from Shonaga First Nation. She carries the spirit name, head and leader of the Fire Flower. As a multiple award-winning speaker, event organizer, author, singer, ceremonial practitioner, and artist, Kim has presented locally, nationally, and internationally for over past 3 decades. She's committed to walking the road of reconciliation to support healing for Indigenous and Inuit communities. Thank you so much for taking the time today from a busy schedule. Welcome, Kim.
So I'll give you a hug. Thank you so much. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm going to tilt this a little bit because it's a little bit high for me. There we go. I know you can hardly see me behind the podium. I'm vertically challenged, but I have a big voice. So I'm not sure I need a microphone. But I want to thank you for the beautiful introduction, setting the tone of engagement for this evening's affairs. I was invited to come and speak, but also to open us up in a good way with a good heart and a good mind. And this is what we do when we come together. This is National Indigenous History Month, for those of you who didn't know. Let's hear a little bit of applause for that. Yeah. It's relatively new. We're also just recently celebrating National Indigenous Peoples Day, June 21st, solstice, longest day of the year. And we just celebrated our 26th year in that aspect this past 21st, so just a couple days ago. And as I think about the stage and the platforms that have been presented to us to speak and represent our various nations, I'm very aware of how important it is to speak well and to be inclusive and to really start things off on a relationship-based process. And so I was invited to start us off with a smudge and a few words. And while I am not religious at all, I'm deeply spiritual. We have spiritual practices that enable us to kind of take care of ourselves, body, mind, and spirit. No matter who you are, where you come from, what faith-based practices you have, we include you in our world. You are walking on the bodies of our ancestors, and we want to do them proud. So I'm just going to light the smudge. Just going to light a wee bit because I don't know where the smoke alarms are, and the last thing I want to do is have a mass exodus and be responsible for that. So should it happen, it's not me. But today I brought sage, white buffalo sage, not the kind you put in your turkeys. Okay, everybody gets excited when they learn about this, that you can cleanse yourself and take care of things. And I want to smudge you. Normally I would go down to each one of you. And so what we do is we smudge all four directions: east, south, west, and north. We smudge above to the sky world and below. And of course, we always take care of ourselves. And so when we're doing that, we're cleansing ourselves, body, mind, spirit, but we're also providing a bit of protection for each and every one of us so that we know we're in safe space. And that's what we're creating tonight. This is a place where we can safely speak our minds, share our thoughts, knowing that we're not targeting anybody, we're not outing anybody or pointing any fingers. We're simply encouraging you to go from your head where your ego and judgment resides and travel all the way down to your heart space and open that up and listen and engage from that space today. So if you can kind of challenge yourself to go there. As people are speaking, sometimes you get triggered and then you start off on this journey. Oh yeah, I've heard that before. Oh, I don't agree with that. That's how you know you're in your head space. Immediately cut it off and say, oh, no. I'm just here to listen and bear witness so that we can actually stay connected. And those connections are very much not visible, but you can feel them. We have multiple senses to let us know when and if we are connected. So I want to bring our hearts and minds together, and I want to begin setting the tone of engagement today by acknowledging many things that help to support our life and make it possible for us to be here today. So if we bring our hearts and minds together and we think about the first order of creation, we're talking about the sands, the soils, the clays, the gravels, the rocks, the stone beings, and the mountains. This is the first order of creation, the one upon which we place our feet every day, the one that holds us up. These are the most ancient beings on earth, and for us, they are sentient beings. They're very, very important to us, and they're held in such high esteem. We call them grandmothers and grandfathers. And so as you place your feet on those grandmothers and grandfathers and stir up the dust of our ancestors, because we've been here for time immemorial. Now, how long is that? Well, in our teachings, they say we've been here for over 2 ice ages. That means we were here when woolly mammoths were wandering around this area. We've been here a very long time. We have an intimate relationship with our mother, the earth, as do you, because we're all Indigenous from somewhere. And so on this day, I invite you to join me. Bring your hearts and minds together and offer greetings and thanks. Aho miigwech. The second order of creation would be all of the grasses and the shrubs and the trees, the bushes, the hardwoods, the softwoods, the berries, the hanging fruits, and the medicines. They wrap their roots around those grandmothers and grandfathers, giving them a nice firm hug. They are amazing beings, and again, sentient in our world. We speak to them like we speak to each other. We acknowledge all of their sacrifices, and they sacrifice much. They give up their life so that we might have life. And so our sole responsibility, it said, or one of the most important responsibilities, is to give them greetings and thanks. They fill our bellies when we're hungry. They heal our bodies when we're not well. They provide protection for the elements. The elements. My lips are trying to take a vacation. It's not allowed. And of course, they provide endless beauty for our senses. So how could we not come together and be grateful? So on this day, I invite you to join me in giving them greetings and thanks. Now, I also want to bring our hearts and minds to the third order of creation. These beautiful beings we refer to as our elder brothers and sisters, the ones who came long before us. I'm talking about the swimmers, the crawlers, the flyers, the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, those that live up in the sky world, and those that live beneath the earth. When we think about our relatives, those kin, they are our food source, they're our companions, they're also our guides. They teach us about governance through our clan systems. They teach us about how to get along in groupings of people and how to raise our families. They teach us endlessly about the earth and relationship to the earth, reminding us never to take more than you need. They are amazing beings who've been here long before us and would do fine if we were to disappear today, but are happy to continue to guide us as we live out our life walks and learn from them, hopefully, but also that we remember to give them greetings and thanks. Now, the fourth order of creation, and by this point, you're probably wondering how many orders of creation is she going to go through? Well, I can go through a few. But I'm going to stop at the fourth order of creation because I have gotten to the point where I'm talking about us, the human race. We're all part of the human family in all of our gender identities, our physicalities, our spiritual or religious practices, no matter where we're located on the earth. We are part of the human family, and there's great diversity amongst us. And it is amazing to witness and support that great diversity. It's reflected in all of creation. And so on this day, I want to acknowledge your ancestors. I want to acknowledge your families and communities that you are a part of, your heart circles. I want to acknowledge all those that are present right now and all those that will come long after us. As we bring our hearts and minds together and think about all the beings that have been part of the human race, there's so much to celebrate, remember, talk about, and of course, pass on to those that will come long after us. And so it's my honor to get up here today and remind us about relationships. Everything we do in our culture is based on relationships. We understand that the beginning of anything that we do is starting off with respect. And so when I speak these words, I'm starting off in that good way. We have 4 R's. So the first one is respect. And when we have respect in place, then we can move forward into a relationship. And I hope that's what we're doing right now. I hope you're starting to feel that kind of circle around us. And then once we have that respectful relationship, we can move to the next stage, which is to be responsible about that by nurturing each other's wellness and care. And then once we have all of that in place, then we get to reciprocity, where we're supposed to share with each other. So those are the 4 R's: respect, relationship, responsibility, and reciprocity. If you use those 4 tenets in your life, you will be a good human being, and all those who cross your life paths will be better for it. But you will be richer for it, because the only thing you get to take once this meat suit is done, because you're only here for maybe 100 years, is the quality and the integrity of the spirit that you've nurtured, fed, and taken care of. You are a gift on this earth. You were born whole and complete, perfect in the way that you have arrived. And the way that you choose to walk your life walk is your responsibility. And if you're doing it in all of those good ways, you can do nothing better. You should be very proud of yourself. You should be very accepting of yourself. So I'm hoping that those 4 orders of creation and that welcome has started to permeate what this event is about and how we're going to come together. I too, as a visitor in this region, because I come from the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territories, which are located up around the Georgian Bay and beyond areas, I'm a visitor to the traditional treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. That said, I have a really good relationship with them, and I want to honor them on this day, in this month, for the rest of my life walk, actually, because I consider all relationships forever relationships, good, bad, and ugly. There's something to learn from them all. So I thank you very much for taking the time to allow me to speak and to perhaps carry some of the seeds that's just planted in you so that you can share with others. That's your responsibility because we've started off in a respectful way and I've tried to establish a relationship with you. So let's move it forward. So for all those who weren't able to be here, share a little bit of what was said today or what was shared today with somebody who wasn't able to make it. Or hold it in your own right and pass it around in your circle so we can ripple out all of that beautiful goodness and kindness. In our world, from our cultural perspectives, life is good. We call it Bamadzawin. Bamadzawin is the good life. And it's my sincere hope that each and every one of you will carry that Bamadzawin as we move forward. If you haven't embraced it yet, it's not too late. It's for everybody. The earth has no favorites. She takes no sick days or holidays. She's always here to support you, and creation is always bearing witness to the choices you make with the most powerful superhero gift that you have. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to tell you right now. It's called free will. Through your free will, you can choose on a daily basis what kind of being you are going to be on this day, and indeed every day moving forward. Always look forward, don't look backwards. We can't change the past, but we can make really good decisions that can carry us forward. I say that intent travels ahead of physical action. So what you intend is what you meet. So my encouragement is to intend well, so that what you meet, is exactly what you need, exactly what you intended. I carry the spirit name head or leader of the fire flower. So I want to speak in my language just for a moment because I shared some of our traditional teachings and maybe some of you out there can recognize some of the words I'm saying, but if not, spirit knows what I'm saying. Hanin bojo mishike and dodem. Shkodenigan will waskonen indigenous cause. Shawanagan dunji havlock dunjiban Anishinaabe kweo jibwe potawatomi Caribbean and Dow. I told you from my heart to your heart, I'm offering greetings. So we don't just say hello or how, like Hollywood says. We actually say, my spirit recognizes your spirit because we know we're spiritual beings having a physical experience and not physical beings having a spiritual experience. So when we put that into right context, it makes sense to greet each other in that beautiful, kind way. I'm Turtle Clan. I carry the spirit name head or leader of the fire flower. I know most know me as Grandmother Kim, but if you have a question for me, you have to ask me. I was wondering, and if you can roll that off, I might answer. It's just a challenge. Don't get overwhelmed. I have to tease you a little bit because people get a bit too serious. I come from Shawanaga First Nations, which is up in the Parry Sound region. I'm the firstborn daughter of Pico Mekwe, thunder coming in the distance. That's my mother. And I'm the firstborn daughter of Nanny Boy Makwa, New Bear Standing. It is my honor to stand before you today and start us off in all of those good ways with a good heart and a good mind. 3 things I'm going to wish you and then I'm done. Like, honestly, I'm done. Once I get a mic, I know it's just hard. It's like it's just magnetized and I just can't leave it. But there are 3 things we can wish without consequence. And I really want to offer those to each and every one of you. Peace of mind, good long life, and good health. Miigwech, everybody.
So thank you, Kim. Thank you so much for that. So I'm sure all of you already know the person who I'm going to be inviting next to give the opening remarks, the Executive Director of Pride at Work Canada, Colin Druhan. But for those of you who haven't already met him, Colin Druhan is a business strategist with more than 15 years of experience working with towards LGBTQI+ communities. He has served as Executive Director of Pride at Work Canada since 2014. In 2021, he was elected chair of the Board of Directors of Volunteer Toronto, Canada's largest volunteer center, where he has served as a director since 2018. He also sits on the advisory board of the Diversity Institute at the Ted Rogers School of Management. In 2020, Colin was named a Diversity Fellow by Civic Action, joining a diverse group of rising leaders who are passionate about shaping their communities within the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. Originally from Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, Colin received a Bachelor of Fine Arts from NSCAD University and has completed executive education programs at both the Rotman School of Management and at Harvard Business School. Welcome, Colin. Okay.
Most of you already know him. Is that a read? Thanks, everyone. And thank you so much, Kim, for getting us started in a good way. We appreciate your words. I appreciate your words very much. As Sandeep said, my name is Colin. My pronouns are he, him. And I'm from Nova Scotia, like you said, Mi'kma'ki. And my parents are of Spanish, Irish, and Scottish descent. So a settler here as well. I was overwhelmed a little bit at the beginning of your words, Kim, when you talked about creating a safe space, mostly because the place that we're in right now is very emotional for me, because I can see 401 Richmond. It's the building that's right across there. And the first job that I ever had working in the queer community in Toronto was right in that building. It was with the Inside Out Film Festival. And the first time that I ever attended a screening at Inside Out, I was a bit overwhelmed. I can't tell you what movie I saw or what day of the week it was or what color I was wearing, but I can tell you the way that I felt when I saw people in the lobby holding hands and when I saw people putting their arms around each other in the theater. Where I grew up and when I grew up, I never seen that before. So to be in that space, it was really the first time in my life that I truly felt safe. It was the first time that I felt like I belonged somewhere. And I thought, this is how I want the whole world to be. I want everywhere to be somewhere where I belong. So that's when I made the decision to work with queer and trans communities. And it can be a tough decision to work in the community that you're a part of, because as I moved through different jobs, I had to realize that not everybody in our communities shared that sense of safety and security that I felt in some of those spaces where I was working. And it was my responsibility to learn about how I could do better and how I could make those spaces more inclusive for more people. But one of the things that I learned as I went through, no matter if I was working with folks who were living with HIV and AIDS, who struggled to find work and pay for the medication that would keep them alive, if I worked with students who, because they didn't have a relationship with their family, struggled more than some of the other students, they ended up with higher debt, sometimes they couldn't finish school. Or if I worked with newcomers and refugees who came to Canada with the promise of escaping state-sponsored violence in their country of origin, only to find that they couldn't get a job because they have an accent or they don't have the elusive Canadian experience that a lot of employers look for. So when you work in a lot of the queer and trans communities that we have here in Canada, you can pretty consistently feel like a failure. You can just think, if maybe I could just get a little bit more money, or if I was just a little bit better at my job, some of these problems would go away. But it's like you're swimming with weights on your feet, because the systems that keep us oppressed are so crushing, can feel so crushing. So what an opportunity in 2014 when I got to work with Pride at Work Canada, and I got to speak directly with employers about what they could do to bring some of those barriers down, because we can do all the resume workshops in the world and we can give people all the job training in the world. But if employers do not change their practices and really open their doors and welcome people in, all of the folks who are doing all of the important work in our communities, it's not going to get half as far as it could get. So what a gift for me to start working at Pride at Work Canada in 2014. And what a gift for me to work with some of the dedicated folks that we have. We actually have a lot of people from our staff team here today. So if you work with us, can you just give a little bit of wave, even you, Prue, in the back? Thanks, yeah. Yeah. And not too long ago, it was really just a few of us. So it was just me and Florence and Prue and Luis and Jade. And when the pandemic hit, I was very, very scared, because I was very worried that employers that we work with were not going to prioritize diversity and inclusion. But I wasn't scared for long, because I saw how hard Jade and the crew were going to be working and how dedicated they were. So I'm really pleased to say that, since the beginning of the pandemic, because of that hard work and because of the hard work of some of our newer employees like Sandeep and Quinn and Connor, who are helping on the back end, and some of the other folks we have here today, They worked together to expand our annual revenue by over $1 million. And yes, thank you. And that funding really helps us not just to increase our programming, but to introduce 11 new full-time jobs for people from our communities. Jobs that we think pay pretty well, include benefits, dental, health insurance that includes gender-affirming care, life insurance, personal finance sessions with a financial advisor. And this year, we're going to be helping all of our folks save for retirement as well. So you can actually be inclusive and be prosperous as well. So all of those people that wave their hands, I just really want to thank all of them for all the work that they do all year round. I know that Pride is when we're supposed to celebrate, but they've been working very hard all month. So all of those people are dedicated members of our community who bring their lived experience as well as their professional skills to work every day. So I hope that if you get a chance to meet them tonight, you thank them for all their hard work, because those are the people who have your back, because they've always had mine. And whatever you're trying to do this year, coming out of Pride, if you're trying to start an employee resource group, or you're trying to hire more folks from our community, or if you're just trying to get your coworkers to use your fucking name, those people are on your side, and so am I. So happy Pride, everyone.
Thank you, Colin. So now I would like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor, Rainbow Faith and Freedom, a global movement to confront religious-based LGBTQI discrimination and improve the human and equality rights of LGBTI people everywhere. And it is with honor that I invite to the stage Reverend Dr. Brent Hawks, Executive Director of Rainbow Faith and Freedom. So Reverend Dr. Brent Hawks is an LGBTI activist and senior pastor of the Metropolitan Community Church of Toronto. Dr. Hawks has been at the forefront of ministry to the LGBTI community for over 40 years. On January 14, 2001, he officiated at the first legal same-sex marriage in the world. He received the Order of Canada, the Order of New Brunswick, and 3 honorary degrees for his stand of social justice and human rights for LGBTI communities. In February 2019, Dr. Hawks was appointed to the governing board of Regents of Mount Allison University. He's the founder of Rainbow Faith and Freedom, which is working to confront and decrease religious-based LGBTI discrimination around the world. Thank you so much, Dr. Brent. Please.
Thank you. They say polite people don't talk about sex or religion. And so that would mean I wouldn't have much to say, because I talk mostly about sex and religion. Rainbow Faith and Freedom was founded to confront religious-based homophobia and religious-based transphobia. Activists all over the world were saying the main reason for LGBTI discrimination and LGBT exclusion was religious-based discrimination. Religious-based homophobia and religious-based transphobia. For decades, the LGBTI community was fighting religion, and we were winning. But we're now losing ground all over the world, the fundamentalism of a variety of different faith traditions. I believe that the LGBTI community in Canada had made a couple crucial mistakes along the way. One being, we would fight for legislative change. And as soon as we won it, we'd move on to another fight for another piece of legislative change. And what we failed to do was to do the education piece to make sure that equality in law became equality in practice. Because we may have won the legal rights, but many people did not feel that difference in their lived experience. They were still experiencing discrimination in their faith communities, in the healthcare sector, the education sector, and where they work. So Rainbow Faith and Freedom is about trying to take a look at religious-based discrimination in Canada, particularly in the areas of education, healthcare, families, and faith. 4 areas that we've documented that discrimination is alive and well in Canada. Sometimes we think our job is to save the rest of the world because everything's okay here. Not true. We have a lot of work to do to clean up our own backyard. The second mistake I believe that we've made is that we treated religion as the enemy. And in the process of doing that, many LGBT people of faith felt we had no place. Many LGBT people of faith said it's easier to come, in my case, it's easier to come out as gay in the Christian community than it is to come out as Christian in the gay community. And so LGBT people of faith have not always been welcomed in LGBT organizations. We've not been able to be out as people of faith in those organizations. And that means those organizations have lost that resource. But it also means that we've pushed allies away. People of faith who want to work with us, allies who want to help, have been felt like they're not wanted because religion is treated as the enemy. So Rainbow Faith and Freedom was founded in 2018 to confront this, to deal with religion differently by changing hearts and minds. We're very grassroots oriented. We believe that we want to change hearts and minds so the average family of faith would not kick their kids out when they come out. And that the average local institution, whether it's a church, synagogue, mosque, or temple, or long-term care facility, hospice, hospital, private school, et cetera, would still welcome and embrace LGBTI people. And so that's our mission. So we're beginning with faith. We just got a grant to do faith work in the province of Ontario. And so that's going to keep us a little busy over the next couple of years. We're applying for a grant. How many of you saw the movie, The Green Book? Okay, The Green Book was written about people of color, Black people in the southern US, the 50s and 60s. When they traveled, they didn't know where there was a motel where they could stay, or a restaurant where they could go and have a meal. So a book was published to tell them whenever they traveled, they could look in that book and find what's safe. Well, for the first time publicly, I'm announcing that Rainbow Faith and Freedom is going to establish the Rainbow Book. And we want to be able to publish statistics on churches, synagogues, and mosques and temples throughout Canada, hospitals, hospices, et cetera, various institutions throughout Canada. So if you want to know where it's safe and where it isn't, you can go online and find that information. And so that's part of what we'll be doing in Canada. The final thing I will say as I'm watching my clock is Donald Trump has unleashed an obnoxious form of the religious right. And we've seen that in the United States. We saw part of it in Canada in the occupation of Ottawa. And more the religious right are speaking out and pushing back. And we're hearing more and more seniors in long-term care facilities being pressured to give up their homosexuality before they die. Vulnerable seniors. And we're hearing more and more people at work experiencing that pushback from the religious right, putting them down for inviting them to come to Pride, putting them down when they talk about getting married. And so we have work to do to make sure that people of faith are welcome in our workplaces, even if they are conservative people of faith, and that LGBT people don't have to suffer because people of faith are welcome. So a lot of dialogue, a lot of work, a lot of listening, and time to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hoss. We're looking forward to hearing more from you. I identify as a gay man. I moved to Canada from India in 2019. I was raised in the Hindu faith and culture. So religion is different for different people. It's different things for different people. For me, religion is part of who I am. It's my identity because it keeps me rooted to my family, my home back in India, the traditions that I grew up with. Most of all, it reminds me of my grandmother who instilled these traditions in me. So if I am to feel belonged in any environment, the intersectionality that I bring in as a gay man, as an Hindu, must be respected. So let us hear from our wonderful panelists today on how we can make this possible for everyone. To take this conversation forward, I would like to welcome our moderator for the session today, Jade Pichette, who is the Director of Programs, Pride at Work Canada. Jade is an inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility professional based in Toronto. Currently, Jade works with over 250 large employers across Canada around gender expression, gender identity, and sexual orientation inclusion. Previously, Jade served as the volunteer and community outreach coordinator at the Archives, the education programs coordinator at Kindspace, and they continue to run an independent inclusion and diversity consulting business. They were one of the authors of the Transitioning Employers, a survey of policies and practices for trans inclusion workplaces, and the co-host of the Uncovering Belonging podcast. Welcome, Jade.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. This is an important event for me. As a person of faith myself, as a Githya, so a clergy member in my religious tradition, I have not only always known if I could talk about being religious at work, even though I'm a career queer. I'm a career queer who's worked in nonprofit after nonprofit after nonprofit, with a few bouts of self-employment between there. But I thought this was an important topic for us to talk about. And I appreciate that we're live streaming this, so there is a recording of this. So many other people who aren't here are listening to these words, are doing it in a good way, and are taking in what we're saying today. And more people will in recordings and watches of this discussion afterwards. You know, even in preparing for this, even though this is an event that I helped spearhead, I asked myself how much of myself I would bring today. Even though this is a topic that is so close to my heart, I was the first trans feminine person to present at the Parliament of World Religions. I actually started this job late because of that. And even my master's research was on trans people and religion in Ontario, specifically, trans women in religion. And yet I said, do I bring pieces of my faith to this discussion? And then I sat and I said, okay, what would every elder that I've ever talked to tell me to do? Would be bring myself and bring those pieces of myself. So one is my oath ring. I bring my oath ring as a recognition of my position as clergy, but also as my commitment to community in having this discussion as one where it is about frith, so a state of non-aggression, a state of peace, a state of engagement, but also a state where we don't all have to agree. Sometimes I think this is a challenge that kind of Brent was talking to as well, is that sometimes we get very stuck in this idea that we have to agree, we have to understand each other. But sometimes it's just about accepting each other, even if we don't understand. That's what living in community is. That's what living in a healthy, inclusive workplace that is based in belonging is being able to say, I might not understand some of these pieces of you, but that's okay. Because I still see you, I connect with you, and we're here for each other. And so I'm so grateful to be having this discussion today and to have a wonderful panel to invite up. So Grandmother Kim, would you come join us as well on the panel? Yes, please do. And then we have three other wonderful panelists who I'm really grateful have joined us. So Hazim Ismail, who uses the pronouns dia and they, them, who's a coordinator at OCASI. Hazim is a Bugis Malay Chinese queer anthropologist currently residing in Toronto. They hold an MA of Anthropology and Contemporary East and Southeast Asian Studies from the University of Toronto with a specialization in Southeast Asian sexualities. They have almost a decade of professional experience in the newcomer and refugee resettlement sector with World University Service Canada, OCASI, the University of Winnipeg, Rainbow Railroad, Manitoba Interfaith Immigration Council, to name a few. They work on decolonizing gender and sexuality and have been presented internationally, including the International Conference of Gender Studies Bangkok and LATU. Zim currently serves on the board of Planned Parenthood Toronto, as well as Maggie's Toronto Sex Worker Action Project. and is also one of our members of our Matrices working group as well, which is a group that a networking event for trans, non-binary, and agender folks. And so I'm so grateful to have Hazim joining us today and for us to meet in person finally. I'm also very grateful for Brittany Hudson, who uses the pronouns they, them, elle or il en français, who's the program manager of youth education and employment at Friends of Ruby. My bios went away. There we go. Brittany is a community developer and program designer based in Toronto, Ontario. They're currently pursuing a Master's of Theological Studies, specializing in urban community development at the Toronto School of Theology. Brittany is passionate about creating inclusive places of worship and community for 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals where they can be their authentic selves. So welcome, Brittany. A change agent and seasoned facilitator on challenging corporate and social development sector assignments. He has 15 years experience as a human rights activist, public speaker, and presenter, including 10 years of research, design, development, and implementation of training programs, workshop facilitation, post-secondary teaching, and adult education. He commenced his facilitation journey internationally in 2006, and since then has facilitated a wide variety of learning, interventions, and policy consulting assignments, such as diversity management, team building, leadership retreats and conferences with numerous clients worldwide, including the US State Department, UK Aid, European Union, Conference Board of Canada, and British Council. No big deal. He has a master's degree with double majors in human resource management and marketing, and he also has certificates in training, facilitation, strategic quality management, and adult education. Mohammed is the first ever equity, diversity, and inclusion manager for the city of Kingston. So welcome, Mohammed. So I'm going to join you down here with a very loud mic, apparently. So everybody will have to turn on their mics when they're speaking. So I'm very grateful to be having this discussion. And as I said, I think this is a discussion that often we don't have, right? Like I haven't seen us having this intersection of discussions where we can actually bring ourselves as members of the community or supporters of the community, as well as, you know, spiritual, religious, cultural beings. And when planning this topic, we had challenges. We had a lot of organizations who kind of were scared to have this conversation, which just told us at Pride at Work Canada that we should be having this conversation. So I'm very glad to have you all here. So I'm actually going to start with Brittany. So Brittany, in your Master's of Theology research, you're looking at the challenges of finding inclusive spaces for 2S LGBTQIA+ people of faith. What are some of the impacts you see on 2S LGBTQIA+ people of faith in trying to find these welcoming communities?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And I'm really glad that we're having this conversation. So some of the challenges that I tend to see within my studies, and I think it's kind of a weird thing that I study religion and I also support folks with employment. So this is kind of cool. But one of the challenges that I see, and first off, I'll state that when queer or trans or two-spirit folk are looking for places of belonging, they're looking for places of belonging. They want to bring their whole selves into that community, into that practice. And we'll speak specifically in Toronto. What I tend to find is that folks are, if they do find affirming places to worship or to be in community, that those spaces tend to be very white. And so they're able to bring their sexuality, their gender expression, but the other pieces of them kind of stay at the door. They're not able to bring those into the community. So that's something that is a real challenge for folks when they're coming into those spaces. And it brings a challenge for us, folks who are creating those spaces, to consider the racialized folks and the people who are different. It's a call not just for us to think about race, but also think about disability, think about other barriers or other things that make people who they are. Because folks are not just queer or trans, folks are dynamic. So that's something that is a real challenge. Folks are always looking for belonging, but the question is, are they gonna find belonging or true belonging or full, complete belonging?
I think this idea where we end up picking pieces of ourselves is a really important one, of like which piece of ourselves is getting seen and which piece of ourselves do we have to choose to accept as seen because we don't have a choice in that matter. So Mohammed, you know, often there's this perception that there's a conflict between being religious or spiritual and being, you know, queer or trans. Could you talk about like that perception and how it should be challenged, perhaps?
Yeah, of course, there's always this understanding between religious or spiritual communities as well as the queer communities that you either have to be one or the other. You know, you cannot have both identities. You know, when I came out in 2016, you know, so my full name is Syed Muhammad. So like I purposely chose to go with Muhammad to make sure that everyone can understand that a gay man named Muhammad can be a reality. And you know, like it was always, this conflict always created a vacuum for most of us, you know, in many ways. Like if you tell somebody that you are religious, so they say like, but didn't you just tell that you go to Pride? So how's that working for you? Like, so you don't offer prayer? And by the way, so like it's not in my bio. Like I'm not very excited about it. Like I led Pride Winnipeg board for 3 years, and you know, like Pride is a very Eurocentric idea for most of us, and most of the income that comes from the festival comes from the selling of booze, the alcohol. And like being a practicing Muslim, I don't drink alcohol, I don't carry alcohol, I don't touch alcohol in any way. So like when I took over the board, the first question that was asked from me was like, how will you lead a festival that creates the revenue from selling of alcohol and also be a faithful Muslim? Like then I said, like, why is that a problem? Like, why do I have to switch one side of my identity off to accept the other side of my identity? And it's not just for a queer Muslim, but it's like, you know, Reverend very beautifully said, like the expectation that you have either or is very troubling, especially when, you know, like when I look at myself and many other queer Muslims that I've been with, that, you know, like religion is extremely important for me and most of us who are faith based individuals. And also our gender identity or sexual orientation is very important at the same time. So the expectation of leaving one aspect of my identity at the door to prove myself in a queer space or a Muslim space is absurd. I just want to highlight one more thing. Like before I came out and started working with Pride Winnipeg, I was very active with Islamic community in Winnipeg, and like because of my public speaking ability, they would invite me to come and speak at many occasions and talk to youth about the career aspiration and whatnot. But then what ended up happening was that when I came out, like, oh my God, he's going to corrupt our youth. Stay away. Like, and to a point where in 2019, when my aunt passed away, I was asked not to attend the funeral prayers because there will be people who will be bending in front of me and I might get erotic feelings seeing them while they're praying. That's the exact words I was told when I was asked not to attend the funeral. And that's the point when that reminded me how important it is for me to go in spaces like these and every other spaces and tell people like my name is Muhammad and I'm proud gay Muslim. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and this is something I hear happen in workplaces too, where I want to thank you for sharing that with such deep courage to do so, because I think this happens to people at work where they come out and are starting to find a place for themselves, and they want to go use the prayer room or the meditation room or the like, and then suddenly they're no longer really welcome in said room. So I want to ask Hazim, employers often see, as we've been talking about, these areas almost of sexual orientation, gender identity, and creed, because creed is what is actually in the protected grounds, as somewhat in conflict, as if these are two differing grounds that are in conflict and they have to figure out how to accommodate between the two. But I think that leaves a lot of us out, right? So could you maybe speak to that about like, what would you say to employers who think that these are competing grounds?
Thank you. I would say to the employers, read a book. No, no, it's true, because that kind of approach is very ahistorical, right? Because if you look at the way religion and queerness have interacted prior to colonization, they've kind of complemented, or people, not like to romanticize it, but it's worked, right? And so when I say read a book, I really mean to look back at what has led to this situation and the rhetoric that's being spewed that that creates a divide or this dichotomy between being religious and being queer, right? And I'm glad Pride at Work is having this discussion, because we need to continuously disrupt that dichotomy. So yeah, I would say, like, I'm if you ask me where I'm from, I'd ask you to meet me by Harborfront so I can push you in the water, especially if you're white. But I am from Malaysia, Indonesia. On my mother's side, I am Bugis Malay. On my father's side, I am Chinese. And so my father grew up very Buddhist, and my mother is very Muslim, but Muslim in a very syncretic sense, right? So for example, like our indigenous religion, you make space for jinns at the table, right? Even the word jinn is actually coming from Arabic, brought over in the 1400s. Before that, we had our own names for spirits. So even at that level, there's a level of syncretism, right? There is a bit of accommodation at the state and like employment, like corporate private sector level back home. It primarily emphasizes Islam. In an ideal setting, you would make way for all sorts of syncretism at the workplace, right? Just before I pass the mic, there's this idea, because I had an employer do this and I thought it was great. And it kind of tackled that kind of uneasiness around queerness and religion in the workspace, is that they had a calendar that new employees could add to for dates that were important to them, right? And this tackles not just religion, it tackles spirituality, it tackles like some people, lost loved ones, or there might be a period where there's a slump in their mood. And I don't know how it would apply to in a really big setting. It was a smaller organization, but it just flagged for the employer like this the importance of self-autonomy to determine like not just religion, but like whatever was important to employees. And that created a great space to have conversations around Ramadan or Christmas or whatever. But and that worked for me, and that made me feel really welcome. So I just thought I'd share that. Yeah, thank you.
I think we have a new practice to adopt at Pride at Work Canada. Thank you so much for that, because we actually will look at doing that. So often I hear that, spirituality, faith, religion should not be in the workplace. As mentioned, sex and religion are considered the inappropriate topics. Luckily, I have no problem being the rude one. But, integrating cultural healing practices has history in workplaces as being an important piece. And as we move forward through like reconciliation and through actually recognizing all the harms that have been done on this land, sometimes we need to look at the ways that we can integrate cultural practices, spiritual practices into the workplace for healing. So I was wondering, Kim, if you might want to speak to this about how cultural practices and as a form of healing in the workplace can create this sense of belonging for folks, can be an important place that all employers should be looking at.
I love that question. It's a daily challenge for me. I get invited to speak publicly so often, but I'm asked to leave a portion of myself at the door because I want to bring in cultural practices to create safety. It's not just a cultural practice. It's for me to feel safe. I live in an unsafe country. Canadians at large do not accept our continued existence. And the expectation from the government or leadership in this country is to erase us entirely, even in 2022. We've experienced great atrocities in these lands. And I was appalled by, and I'm going off a little bit, but I have to say this. I was appalled by Canada's general reaction to the discovery of the 215 children last year. Many businesses did not put their flags at half-mast. Prime Minister of this country did not even go to the site to pay his respects. And almost no funding was offered for reparations and healing. And our cultural practices are where we find those moments and spaces and places of healing. Body, mind, and spirit, we need to take care of ourselves. We need to arrive whole and complete. We need the opportunity to take care of ourselves within the workspace in that manner as well. We become more productive, we're healthier, our mental state is just more balanced and harmonious. There are so many benefits to including the whole person as opposed to a part of the person. And so what I have found, and I've been doing this work for over 30 years, is I'm always very eagerly invited to come and speak, but you're not going to smudge, are you? You're not going to burn anything. You might set off the fire alarms. You're not going to say anything that would offend anybody, because there might be some religious people here. I'm given all kinds of parameters on what I'm not going to do. They don't ask me, they tell me. And I can never be unkind intentionally to another person. I understand ignorance still exists. I understand fear is the basis of most of this. And we've had 500 years to teach all the people who come to our great island, our home, North America. We call it Turtle Island. We've had 500 years to teach you that we are safe and that we do have our own practices and that they do help. As the degreening of the world, is so amplified now, people are rushing to us to ask us what to do, what can we do? Oh, we need to treat the earth better. I mean, it's pretty obvious. That's a very universal kind of foundation. We need to treat each other better in our workspaces. So don't ask us to come in and leave a portion of ourselves at the door. So what I do is I go and I say, yes, no problem. And then I do it anyways. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you have to be a rule breaker and show them not to be afraid. I'm not lighting a bonfire in your place of business. A little bit of smoke, is not going to hurt anybody. I understand how powerful that practice is for us. And I was so honored to be able to light a little bit of the smudge today for me, but also for all of us and for all of those that came before you. And of course, for all of you that, or all of those that will come after us. Because if we don't create brave space and take brave steps stepping forward, no change is ever going to manifest. I don't understand why we haven't changed by this point. It's 2022. We have every means possible to communicate, to share, to educate, and the ignorance is still overflowing across the world. Time for change.
Thank you. And I know even for myself, even though I'm a white settler and I have my own traditions, you opening the space in a good way and lighting that smudge helped my heart. So I'm grateful that you did. So one of the pieces that we know is that even within these intersections that we're talking about, there are deeper intersections in terms of the parts of our communities that have been left out. And so Hazim, I want to talk to you about, you've done a lot of work with queer and trans refugees. And what are some of the challenges that you see for queer and trans refugees in employment in Canada, especially when it comes to having their faith, having their queerness on display, and only able to show pieces of themselves. So what are some of those major challenges that you've seen?
Thank you. When I saw the question, one of the words that came to mind, and I use this word a lot when I work with newcomer and refugees, is kind of one of the first words that if they don't know, I'm like introducing them to it. It's contortion. There's a lot of contortion in workspaces for refugees and newcomers in general, whether they're queer or not. But there's an assumption of an association with atheism with queer refugees. And a lot of queer refugees, I myself am a former queer refugee, have a complex relationship with religion, specifically religion that's been kind of embedded in the state, like a particular form of religious persecution. And so, but at the end of the day, like it's very hard to disentangle my culture from my religion. And so like, like every Ramadan, I still like, I don't pray Tarawih. If people know what that is, I don't want to stand that long, but I will fast. I will celebrate Eid. But in a lot of workspaces that I've been in, there's a startled kind of, people are startled. They don't know what to do with it. And partially because it's not being talked about a lot about enough. But there's an assumption of atheism, right? I worked with queer refugees, for a long time, but one particular incident, we were trying to refer the refugees to mental health supports. And almost immediately, they were referred to a particular organization. Like they do great work for the clientele that they're targeting, but their clientele specifically for people who identify as atheists who are coming from like a religious background. So there was an assumption, like this pipeline of like, oh, you're coming to Canada as a queer refugee, let me just put you up with this atheist organization, right? There's that direct assumption. So that's kind of one little bit, but the contortion bit is just, it's in those kind of moments, in those kind of dynamics, you contort because you want to access the services, you want to access support, you want to access community. And for anybody who's queer and anybody who's religious or face any sort of discrimination from sexism to ableism, contorting in a space is exhausting, right? So just wanted to touch on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also see many challenges for queer and trans youth, especially those who have experienced any type of street-based violence or things that like. So I'll keep moving down the panel. So Brittany, in your work at Friends of Ruby, which is an amazing organization. If you don't know Friends of Ruby already, go and Google them. They do good work. You work with Two-Spirit queer and trans youth and support them with employment. So what are some of the biggest challenges you see for them and in these complexities?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. And so I actually started my role in November, brand spanking new program, and I have the great opportunity of just creating something from scratch that doesn't really exist within the city of Toronto. One of the first things we did was, and I say we, I speak of myself. One of the first things I did was look at all of the employment services that exist within the GTA. And a lot of them, and my co-op student can tell you, a lot of them have rainbow flags and they speak about saying that they bring a place of belonging for everyone, but they don't have the representation either in their staff or if they have workshops or trainings or employment counseling. It's not intersectional and it doesn't speak to the needs that queer and trans youth, especially trans folk, have. And one of the realities that we tend to see is that, especially for trans folk, for trans femme and mass folks, it's really difficult for them to even get into the door of an employment service because there's a lot of things you're going to have to deal with. If they're asking for your ID, that's something that's super major. Are they going to respect your pronouns? Are they going to misgender you right on the spot? That tends to happen to a lot of folks. So that's something that keeps folks out of the door, just from the get-go. The other challenge is that a lot of youth, and I see this a lot of the youth that come into my office tend to be youth that are in school. They're in school, they've done their programs, they might be well-resourced in terms of their educational experience, but they lack the ability to network or the opportunity to network and the opportunity to receive mentorship. Especially for racialized folk, it happens a lot because if you lose a community, if you lose a network or a group of maybe your family that might have an aunt or an uncle or that family friend that could get you in the door of a job, once you lose that, you lose opportunity. So it really is an intersectional conversation. It's not stagnant or just for one group. When we speak about queer and trans youth finding opportunities in employment, we have to speak about racialized folks, we have to speak about Indigenous folks, and we have to center that conversation on Two-Spirit and trans folk, because those are the people who are really not getting the opportunities, because if they are looking for the resource, it might exist, but it might not be welcoming. And if they have the skills to get into the educational system, they might face barriers when it comes to the interview stage or when it comes to even finding the places that seem kind of okay on their website. So yeah, I said a lot, didn't solve any problems, but if anything, I would say it's an opportunity for us to think about as a queer and trans community, to think about as elders, and I put myself in that position, kind of, to think about opportunities to really mentor young people, to find those young folk and to take them under your wing, because you might be the only community that they will ever have. And our community has kind of been divided. We haven't been doing lots of intergenerational work, but we need to do more of that, because the youth are out there and they're looking for support. They're looking for people to mirror after. They're looking for people who they could say, you know, I could be like that one day. But if they don't see you, then how are they gonna be able to do that? How are they able to exercise that visioning, that vision casting and career aspirations? Like seeing Reverend Brent is a huge thing for me. I never thought I would ever see someone who was a queer man who was in his clergy and then doing that. That's amazing. So these are the kind of people we need to see. We need to see folks within religious institutions that are taking that step, folks within the private sector, folks within government need to take the step to mentor. So please mentor, whether it be casually or find an agency, an organization that is doing that type of work, because it's really, really meaningful.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's a very important point, and one that we believe very strongly in. Actually, our last panel that we did virtually was on mentorship. So that's actually online that people can go and look at and watch. And we recommended a number of different places that you can look to do that mentorship. Personally, I do it more informally. You know, people will come to me, they'll contact me through LinkedIn or other places. And, you know, like sometimes we get really busy, but like make time for that one call, you know, make time for that one sit down. If you have no other time than that one moment, make at least that one moment. And, you know, find that time to make that connection. And one other intersection that I wanted to really address is the issue of Islamophobia. So Islamophobia is a very important one in the community. And it's one that we know is very rampant in Canada. We have seen Islamophobic attacks. We have seen challenges. I know I've done some anti-discrimination work, and I actually had organizations who wouldn't join because I put Islamophobia as one of the forms of discrimination we had to address, and they wouldn't join. And that told me that they were not on the same side as me when it came to addressing the real challenges. And more recently, we had a big case that blew up in regards to Western University, where there was two hijabi women who were kissing, and it resulted in a huge controversy. Actually, the editor of our podcast, Sean Ahmed, commented publicly on that and actually addressed that issue because there is an ability to be both queer and Muslim. And so, Mohammed, I wondered if you might want to speak to this challenge that we see in workplaces, in communities, and within the queer community itself of this Islamophobia.
Thank you. This question is really close to my heart for obvious reasons. You know, definitely, when we talk about Islamophobia, I do understand sometimes, because of what we are hearing from mainstream media, there's this feeling that is developing in queer communities and workplaces that, you know, like every Muslim person is out there to blow themselves and kill everyone. So I partially blame the mainstream media for that kind of image for most of us. But then what's more problematic is the rest of the world believing in it. No, and what makes it even worse is the fact that when we see that same expression of hate and discrimination in workplaces, especially queer workplaces, you know, like you use the word career queer, and I proudly call myself a career queer because that's all the time I've worked until I joined City of Kingston. Less of queer work, more of policy work now. So, you know, Islamophobia has always played a role in pushing us to the margins and kicking us out for many reasons. One of the biggest feeling that I still remember is that, you know, like somebody in World Pride New York asking me this question that, you know, like, what are your thoughts about ISIS pushing gay men off the roofs? And it's like, aren't you upset about it? And it's like, yeah, who do you think they're pushing? Us, queer Muslims. Like, do you really think they care about all of you? They really don't think you exist. They're only worried about us. And then you switch the mood to the queer spaces, to Muslim spaces, and then the homophobia in Muslim spaces. You know, like, don't come near me. Like, please don't hug me after the Salatul Eid, the Eid prayers, because you know you're trying to feel me all over, because as if every straight person in this world is something that I want to hug and feel and do what nothing I shouldn't speak about that. So, like it's really more disheartening when we see queer spaces being Islamophobic, because the LGBTQ community should be more sensitive towards oppressive practices, systemic oppression, systemic discrimination. Like I would let Muslim communities be homophobe for some time, but I'm more upset with the queer community being Islamophobe, because you of all the people should know better. You have experienced being an outcast for ages. You have experienced the discrimination for ages, and yet you choose to just push somebody outside your spaces because they might be named as Muhammad or Hazim or anyone else who might sound Muslim and may not even be Muslim. Like sometimes it's just cultural Islam that, that's a different topic for another day. But, like it has destroyed so many lives. Like Hazim was talking about the, refugees. Like I've worked with queer Muslim refugees in Winnipeg, and one of the biggest pain was like that battle of sexual orientation, gender identity, and faith. Like it's so scary when you are coming out. The coming out to public is the easiest thing to do, but coming out to yourself, especially when you are so close to your faith, it's devastating. And the hope is that, like somebody's going to be out there to understand. Somebody's going to be out there to just tell you like it's okay to be both. But that's not happening in most of the situations, because you are either queer or you are Muslim. You cannot be both. And that is a responsibility of everyone who's here, and those people who are watching us through live stream. Normalize these conversations. Normalize the fact that gender identity, sexual orientation, and faith can coexist at the same time. And they can be good Muslims. They can be, dangerous Muslims who push people off the buildings. And there can be queer Muslims who just like to dance and party like every other gay man and queer men or women and non-binary people. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I like to think about this as a coming home. And, we need to stop coming out, and we need to start coming home to ourselves, to, the real community where we can see each other, we can see each other in our complexities, and honor those complexities, and we can live those complexities, because we all are, even if we don't recognize that we are. Those of us on this stage, we don't really have a choice in recognizing our complexities, which is, I think, one of the reasons why we do this work, right? And so I am aware that a giant thing will come and start pulling me off the stage soon. So I do want to have kind of a final few comments. So Kim, I wanted you to maybe you've heard a lot of words from what has been said on the panel, and we'll get a final call to action from each person after this. But could you maybe reflect on some of the words that you've heard today that have touched your heart?
Well, I have to say every word touched my heart. Sitting up here and listening to the heart speak that was generated here made me feel very teary, because it's such truth. And I heard a lot of courage being expressed in lots of different ways. I think it's really important to understand the power of words and the destruction that can come from words. Words are very much weaponized in lots of different ways. And our relationship to words in particular can raise a person up or decimate them in ways we can't even tell, we can't see. You know, we have this facade that we put out into the world to say, this is who we are. This is the strength I hold. No problem. You know, whatever you want to say to me, I can weather that. But that's not true. That's not true at all. We're born with hearts, and we are feelers in this life walk, and we feel things deeply and equally. It doesn't matter how you choose to live your life, or, you know, what gender you might hold, or what faith practice you might have, or, you know, what kind of human being you are. We have this emotional component that is active and sensitized to obvious, you know, very blatant kind of comments, but also nuanced kind of ways of engaging. And we as human beings have not been accepting of that sensitivity. We're expected to have this hard exterior and just swallow it and move on. I don't think we should be doing that. I think the second we stop feeling, the world is going to implode. And there's so much to feel about in different ways. And it is a form of healing and validation, but it's also a necessary component of what makes you a human being. So it's hard to choose just one word on what I heard today, because I think what we're talking about goes beyond words. It goes into that realm of heart speak, where you're just really feeling things, a whole lot of things, and word clothing can really separate you from those feelings when you're asked to kind of bring it down into that restriction. I don't find words really helpful. I do find songs, you know, helpful. And maybe there's words and songs, but you know, that kind of universal language that comes with music is so powerful. It's so healing. So it's been a real honor to sit up here and just really talk from my heart to your hearts. I didn't rehearse, you know, what I would say or what I was going to focus on, because I think when I come into a room, I can feel you, and I hope you can feel me, and I hope you leave better than when you came because of the feelings. The words are kind of like icing on that cake, but at the core of who you are is your feelings.
Thank you. So before Sandeep comes up to formally close us out with Grandmother Kim, what's one quick last thing that you would like folks to know and to do as their action item, their you know, your call to action for them, that you hope that people leave knowing or doing after this event? And Mohammed, we'll start with you and we'll come back this way.
Sure. I mean, my call to action is simple: confront your own biases and use your privilege to hold spaces for those who may not be able to hold spaces for themselves. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. I just want to encourage us, and it's going to be a selfish ask because I deal with youth, but to look for young folks, or it could be folks who might be within your same age category, but might not be in the same maybe state of privilege, or might have the same opportunities as you. But look for folks who are in need of community, and it could be within a faith-based context or an employment context. But look for that. And remember that belonging is not something that requires us to all be the same, but it requires us to all be together.
Hello? Oh,
I think this one.
you just gave me the mic on purpose. No. Now it works. Okay, it wasn't working before. I guess the call to action would just be don't be afraid of the mess. Categories often come trickling top down, but if you actually want to make space for self-autonomy, make that space for self-autonomy for people to determine and express all the complicated intricacies. I think a lot of people trying to make spaces diverse and inclusive and welcoming don't like mess, but that mess is very generative, and that's the key to making things welcoming. So thank you.
close up?
There's some tricksters on these mics.
I think so. Your eyes, not your hands. Okay. I don't know, maybe we've talked too much already. You know, if you're asking me what a call to action would be, yeah, never forget to feel. Never let that feeling get shut down. I spoke about that from my heart to your hearts. It's really important. We cannot navigate our life walks without feelings, and they are real. And I want you to know I validate that in you. I respect that. I see that. I honor that. And I want to nurture that for you as, you know, one individual seeing you whole and complete now, but mentoring and demonstrating how that can be done in very multifaceted ways. Now, that's my call to action. Never stop feeling. Challenge you.
Thank you. And mine is come eat our food. So please stay. Sandeep will come up and close with Kim. But please, my actual call to action, although please eat our food, is connect with somebody that you haven't connected with before. So whether you are here in person and you want to connect with somebody here in person after we close, or if you're online and you connect with somebody through LinkedIn or through another space, find a place to mentor, find that place to connect, even if that's just with one other person, because it's Pride and we need each other. So thank you.
So unfortunately, that's all time we have for today. But thank you, Jade, and the wonderful panelists for engaging a very interesting conversation. I would once again like to thank our sponsor, Rainbow Faith and Freedom, for supporting us in addressing this very key topic of inclusion on religious and 2S LGBTQIA+ communities. I've learned so much today during today's talk, and I hope all of you have also had some key takeaways and learnings too. So thank you everyone for participating in today's panel discussion and event. This session has been recorded for a convenience. We do have other events planned during this Pride season, and we encourage all of you to attend our upcoming Pride events as well, both in person if you're in those cities and virtual, and all our future webinars as well. So to know more, please visit our website, www.prideatwork.ca, or you may follow us on our social media channels. So we request all of you who are in-person attendees to stay, network with others, continue the conversation, celebrate, keep up the great work in creating a workplace of truth, inclusion, and belonging. And like Jade said, please eat our food. So before we sign off, I want to invite Grandma Kim to close the session for the day.
You haven't heard enough of me yet, I guess. But you know, when we open in a good way, we need to close in a good way. And I feel like this was a tremendous opportunity and gift to my heart today. I've been working a lot and I feel a little bit recharged and re-inspired about how we can be and what we can do and where that can go. I mean, every aspect of our life, we're bringing ourselves to the table. And I hope we get to bring our whole selves and that we can feel that as we're doing that. And we choose that because we can. I'm trying to think of good words to say, and I'm going to offer a song. I'm going to close this up in a good way with a song, because I do believe that that is a universal language. But I want to thank, those first three orders of creation for bearing witness to our words today. Even though they're transformed into buildings like this, the grandmothers and grandfathers are listening. And it's said that they have forever memories. They remember everything that's said, spoken, perhaps ceremonial, presented, sung. And so if you want to know about who you are and delve into the past, you can go through your blood memory, or you can spend time with those first three orders of creation and learn to get still. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. The teaching is to listen twice as much as you speak. We have to learn to listen in different ways. We have to use all of our senses, right? Not just our mouths, to communicate well, to validate each other's existence, and indeed our own existence, our purpose, our passions, our gifts. And you have arrived to this earth whole and complete. You are perfect. You are beautiful. You are powerful. You are capable. You belong. And if you haven't heard those words recently, please carry those away, filled with my great love and respect and care as Grandmother Kim, but on behalf of all the nations who continue to hold spiritual and sacred space on these lands that are our home. We are watching and listening. We are welcoming you. We're trying to include you in our circles. Remember to include us in yours. Celebrate diversity. It is truth. So I'm going to close with a traveling song. And no matter where you go, you're traveling with the greatest of our respect and care and love. Repeat those words to yourself on a daily basis when you're feeling a little depleted, a little diminished, a little out of sorts. Those moments when you feel like you don't belong, take a couple gulps of air, breathe it in deep, hold it, let it power up your blood. That oxygen is really be like your superhero power. Pause for a moment and recognize whatever has been presented to you that's unkind or unexpected. It's not yours. That's theirs. They're responsible for that. Everything goes back to its place of arising. And choose just to be a really good human being. I'm going to grab my shaker and I'm going to sing. I'm a little nervous because this mic is loud and I sing really loud. I talk quiet, but I sing really loud. So get ready, guys. I see you. This is my helper. It's called Shayshagun. This is what we call a shaker. And it said that the sound of creator's first thought. So every time we do this, we're asking for creator's attention and all creation's attention. And so the song I'm going to sing is just asking that wherever you go and however you go and whoever you go with it, you get there whole and complete. So it could be in the east, the south, the west, or the north. It could be beginning your spirit journey or connecting and receiving your earth blanket. However and whenever that arises for you, know that you are thought of well, that we're always offering prayers for you, that the ancestors are ready and willing to step forward to walk with you and be there in all aspects of your life. So this is the traveling song. Miigwech, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Song medicine for each and every one of you. Plant it deep in your hearts. And eat food. Yes. I got you. Oh, thank you so much. It's enough just to be here.